Okay, this is video 2 for AP Euro on Tuesday, April 28th. The first 18th century technological advances occurred in cotton manufacturing. In 1733, John Kay invented the flying shuttle, which greatly increased the speed at which weavers could make cloth. Kay's invention created a problem. Cloth could be made so rapidly that it outstripped the supply of thread. By 1765, James Hargreaves solved this problem by inventing the spinning jenny, a machine that initially spun 16 spindles of thread at one time, and by the end of the century, improvements allowed it to spin as many as 120 spindles at once. Kay's and Hargreaves' machines were small enough that they still could be used in the traditional location of cloth manufacturing, the home. Note that these labor-saving devices, including Arkwright's water frame, were in the field of cloth production. Labor-saving devices was useful because British cloth manufacturing was constrained by labor supply, thanks to cotton imports from colonization of India and trade with the American South, and increased wool supply due to the enclosure and agricultural revolution. Labor-saving devices actually resulted in more cloth to sell, giving factory cloth producers a strong price advantage over their competition. However, the cotton industry came at a cost. The cotton imports, which fueled the Industrial Revolution, were available only because of colonization and slavery. The first factories were originally located along streams and rivers so that water could provide energy needed to work the machinery. The invention of the steam engine made it possible to build factories in other locations. The ancestor of the steam engine was the steam pump, which was used to remove water from the mines. James Watt studied the steam pump and adapted it for use in industry. His invention was the first true steam engine as opposed to the steam pump because it worked by pushing steam into each end of the closed cylinder, resulting in the upward and downward movements of the pistons. A decade later, Watt invented an engine that turned the wheel. This made factories independent of water power and dramatically increased the pace of industrial change. Another factor that increased the pace of industrialization was the greater ability to smelt iron. Traditionally, iron was smelted in extremely hot ovens fueled by charcoal, but in the 18th century, England was devoid of forests, and resulted lack of charcoal seriously limited the production of iron. Abraham Darby discovered a means of smelting iron using coal. Like the inventions discussed earlier, the economy experienced a multiplying factor as a result of Darby's invention, as more productive machines made of iron replaced those previously made from wood. Iron and steam were the combination behind perhaps the most important invention of the 19th century Industrial Revolution, the railroad. The first passenger railroad traveled between Liverpool and Manchester in 1830, and by the middle of the century, Britain was crisscrossed with railroad tracks that carried passengers and goods throughout the land. The railroads had an immense impact on the economy. Engines, tracks, stations, tunnels, and hotels for travelers were just some of the machines and structures that were connected with the railroads. It is estimated that 1880, and 1 in 10 jobs in Great Britain was in some way connected either directly with the railroads or with services tied to rail transportation. The British took the lead in manufacturing, but it wasn't long before methods pioneered by the British appeared on the continent. Belgium was the first to industrialize, possibly like Great Britain. It had a plentiful supply of coal and iron. Other nations industrialized with varying degrees of rapidity. The German states were hampered by numerous tolls and tariffs, making the transportation of goods extremely expensive. To aid in the spread of trade and manufacturing, Prussia in 1834 took the lead by creating the Zollverein, a customs union that abolished tariffs between the German states. As certain German states, most notably Prussia, achieved significant industrial growth by the middle of the century, France lagged behind by comparison. Historians often make telling comparisons between Britain and France. Unlike Great Britain, France was racked by political instability in the first half of the 19th century. France also lacked the centralized banking structure enjoyed by British entrepreneurs. Additionally, French population growth was only half that of the European nations during this period. French peasants remained relatively content to stay on the land, unlike their British counterparts who had little choice but to go to the cities in search of low-paying factory jobs. So we're going to stop the reading of the notes there. Let's look at the key concepts here, looking at 6.2, spread of industry through Europe. Britain's ready supply of coal, iron ore, and other essential raw materials promoted industrial growth. Great Britain established its industrial dominance through mechanization of textile production, iron and steel production, and new transportation systems in conjunction with uniquely favorable political and social climates. Economic institutions and human capital, such as engineers, inventors, and capitalists, helped Britain lead the process of industrialization, largely through private initiative. Britain's parliamentary government promoted commercial and industrial interests because those interests were represented in Parliament. France moved towards industrialization at a more gradual pace than Great Britain, with government support and with less dislocation of traditional methods of production. A combination of factors including geography, lack of resources, the dominance of traditional landed elites, the persistence of serfdom in some areas, and the inadequate government sponsorship accounted for Eastern and Southern Europe's lag in industrial development. Because of the continued existence of more primitive agricultural practices and landowning patterns, some areas of Europe lagged in industrialization while facing famine and debt and land shortages. So we're going to stop the concepts there.